You know, it's one surefire way of making me feel emotional about something? Sad old people. I just can't handle that stuff. So Nebraska is directed by Alexander Payne, written by Bob Nelson, and stars Will Forte, Bruce Stern, June Squibb, and Bob Odenkirk, Saul Goodman himself. And Nebraska pretty much centers around this guy named Woody Grant. He's this really old alcoholic dude, and he believes that he's won $1 million from one of those cheap magazine fake sweepstake things, and his chickens. And his son David, played by Will Forte, like reluctantly agrees to bring him all the way to Lincoln, Nebraska, where he can collect his earnings. And on the way, they stop by Woody's old hometown of Hawthorne, and there they begin to, attract some attention because Woody's been telling people he's won $1 million and stuff. Now, to be honest, Nebraska was one of the Best Picture nominees I wasn't really looking forward to watching because I don't know, it just seemed like a typical American Midwest kind of story, and I wasn't that interested in it. But then I watched it. I've watched it twice now, and I have to tell you, like, this movie really, really surprised me. It's such an excellent movie. I love it so much. The first thing I want to touch on with this movie is the cinematography, because obviously, when you look at it, it's in black and white. And recently, in my Oscar video for Best Cinematography, I awarded this first place, and I still stand by that. I think the cinematography of Nebraska is amazing. Like I said there, everything is framed like an old photograph, and everything seems to have like this depth that, sometimes you don't even notice when a movie is in color. It's a perfect example of cinematography that really supports the story because, the old photograph look really, captures the tone and the mood of everything, and like how the camera just kind of very subtle in its movements also kind of mimics the slow pace of the movie. And again, it's one of those rare times when I think the black and white is actually justified, to the point that when I think of this movie in color, it just does not work. Production design also is equally good, like it really also helps further the story because it's not excessive at all. You know how some people when they film black and white movies they feel like they have to compensate for the lack of color by adding like lots of stuff in the production design, and the filmmakers here, I can tell they really kind of respected this choice and they decided not to like compensate for it. It is very subtle, and it really does feel like a town lost in time, which is great. Also, what about that score? The score, I think, by Mark Orton, I think was his name. It's like, I can't really describe it. I don't know my genres, but it's like bluegrass, country, whatever. And it's just so excellent because it feels so perfect for this kind of story, but it doesn't, push any emotions to the foreground. It really is just like a theme playing in the background. And it seems to capture this kind of lifestyle that, the people of Hawthorne have. It's very laid back, like nothing really happens, and just captures that so well. Speaking of pushing the plot forward, I was very surprised to see that this plot, it doesn't necessarily, it's not a moving plot, but that's not a bad thing for this movie. It is a very contemplative movie, it's about looking back on one's life. It's about kind of like reconciling yourself with the past, and ultimately becomes a movie about loving people, loving family, despite all their flaws, and I thought that was great. Every character here is surprisingly deep, really, and it really feels like everyone went through something. And after a while, it really starts to feel like these people, these characters are family, not just to each other, but you start to feel like, this is family. You know how sometimes you have family members who are kind of annoying and, you can't really understand why they are the way they are. But at the end of the day, like, it's just, there's nothing wrong with them, really. They're just family. Now let's talk about those characters one by one. First of all, there's Bruce Dern as Woody Grant, and he turns in an incredible performance. It's so subtle, like he just grunts and mumbles a lot in this movie, but like everything is really there in his eyes. Everything is there in his physicality, just the way he walks and stuff. And it eventually does become quite an emotional performance in a very understated way, and I thought that was absolutely brilliant the way he pulled it off. Like he starts out as this crotchety old man, then at the end you just love the guy, really. Will Forte is a really good foil to Woody Grant's character as David Grant. He really shows this sense of patience and innocence and kind of like, he's very, very naive sometimes. But like you totally buy that this guy is his son, like it just works. June Squibb is like the opposite of these two. Like she's very loud, she speaks her mind, and she's really, really awesome with that. But surprisingly, she is also very layered, like all these other characters. Like they may show a certain, face at first, but like deep down, you can tell that there's more to that, more to them than that. And of course, you've got Bob Odenkirk. I mean, he's always great, as in seriously. And there's a point in the movie when Bob Odenkirk says something like, "Not the face I'm on TV," and I was thinking, that's Saul Goodman, yeah. Pretty much this entire cast is made up of old senior citizens, and they're all really, really great. It really doesn't feel like they're acting at all. It's like they really inhabit this kind of Hawthorne spirit, that whole world weary but still optimistic vibe, and I love that. The script by Bob Nelson is very, very measured. It's very patient. It's very steadily paced, and again fits the characters perfectly well, and really feels like thought was put into every single line that's said. Like it's a very economic script, and it does become like really fun to listen to just because everything just feels so measured perfectly. The only negative thing I have to say about Nebraska is that it is very deliberately slowly paced, and that works for the movie. But at certain points, inevitably there will be parts that feel a bit too slow, parts that feel like they could have been taken out. Especially, I think they try to build David Grant's character a bit, and I didn't think those parts were that necessary because at the end it doesn't matter as much as Woody Grant's story, but that's a very tiny complaint in a movie that's filled with such great stuff. Nebraska turned out to be quite a funny movie and a very heartfelt movie as well, and it really did capture this feeling that very few movies obtain. It's very, again, world weary, and I think everyone can relate to this movie, even if you're not like old like Woody Grant. Like it really makes you kind of appreciate the life you've lived and the people you've met and stuff, and that is just a fantastic achievement. I think Nebraska is a great, great, awesome movie. Recommend you guys check it out. Right, so that's my review for Nebraska. What do you guys think of it? Do you think it has a chance of winning any Oscars this year? Whatever you think, whether you agree with me or disagree, please leave me a comment and let's have a conversation.